Hello.
Hello. Hello. Good evening, Heber. Hello, everybody. My name is John from Broadsheet. You're very welcome to Tomorrow Tonight. We're joined by Broadsheet columnist and a public affairs consultant based in Sligo. Good evening, Heber Rowan.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. Thank you. Heber has a column from last week on the, got a week is a long time, on the St. Patrick's Day visit, our
Yes.
virtual visit to Washington, and you argue that its influence has dramatically waned.
Yes. And it's kind of our position to ask for something, but because we always have that relationship. But the idea that Joe Biden would sacrifice his political capital that he's just spent recently on his big stimulus package for little old Ireland would be kind of not facing up with reality. He's planned to give vaccines to Mexico, I believe, since actually in sort of an agreement with them to try and placate the Trump years because they know they will have spare vaccines that will be oversupplied and they will give them next to them.
Yeah,
So it's going to obviously look to the regional focus, of course. And if I was Joe Biden, perhaps I would do the same too, because your neighbors are more likely to go to war with you first than any other country.
yeah. And the Latin American vote is stronger than the Irish American vote, to be
That
fair.
too, that
Um,
too, that too.
um, so, your column, how have you been, Heber?
Good, keeping busy, a lot of gardening, and fantastic to see some sun the last while.
Great. Yeah. Is Sligo baking?
I wouldn't say baking yet, but like you're in a row there, and we're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Brilliant, brilliant. And you don't surf, Heber, do you?
No, though I have a couple of times as a teenager, and I definitely should get back to it again. But it's an expensive old outing to do it with the surf schools. But it's very good fun. But I haven't done it in years, and I
Right,
really
right.
should. Windsurfing and other sports happens at the famous Strandhill Beach.
Yeah, are you near there?
Oh yeah, about a 15-20 minute drive.
Well then you should really. I mean,
There's also Easkey to the west of Sligo, which is quite famous, which has much higher waves that are comparable to Hawaii, but it doesn't have too many people going there because there's actually a local opposition to people going to Easkey for the waves because those who use the waves like to keep it private for themselves so that
oh,
it doesn't become a tourist spot in its own way.
okay.
So
Not
it
to protect the local wildlife, just to protect
But
their.
just because some surfers apparently like to keep what they have to themselves and don't want other people coming into it.
That's
It's
fair enough. Is there local people, or is it kind of
I understand local people, but
yes,
it's a shame because there certainly would
pity?
be a business and tourist opportunity with that. But so some of these places though, there's a lot of rocks and you would have to get skis and everything else going with it.
Right. Okay. Should we go through the papers uh,
Certainly.
tonight? Irish Examiner: homes may get dearer as supply slumps. Um, in fact, I was speaking to a person today who was saying that property in Sligo has gone up, that they were selling, bungalows, whatever, for 300 grand, or um, so.
Yeah, I mean, even you look at the rental market, which I did just as a curiosity 2 weeks ago. Only four properties for rent in all of surrounding County Sligo town, uh, and the rent is going higher. The rent is going up because people now can work remotely, and um, there are just no houses being built.
Mm.
In the way that should have been. Houses have been completed, of course, the past year. Ones that were already in progress, but all of the ambitious plans for new housing estates have all just been scuppered. And as the article there from the Examiner notes that because of extra savings in households that have not been adversely affected by the pandemic. They have savings and they're ready to spend them. And certain people now will finally be able to have enough for deposits that they never were able to have. So the question is whether the central bank will increase controls on a macroeconomic level and ultimately make it harder for people to own a home. But this is quite a thing when we consider it in the contrast to, say, what it was like in the 1970s, 1960s. The relative price of a house now compared to then with income levels is 7 times higher.
7.
7 times higher. So when you bear in mind what pensions and the price of owning a house, mortgage payments, all the rest are together, it doesn't really match up. The interesting thing, though, is on a wider level, Ireland is the.
How do you mean it doesn't match up, Heber?
Well.
Oh, you mean in terms of
income disparity. So, right. Say nowadays you need, say, if you have a 30 grand a year job, you're an established, say, clerical officer in the civil service. You've been there 10 years, you'd be on that amount, and you have a stable job, but you can only get 3 times your salary in a mortgage under the current rules, and maybe 10% if you're first-time buyer. So that's basically means that you'd be lucky to get 90 grand, if even, and that is quite a problem. So how this moves forward basically is the question of, well, either you could have a pension if you're lucky, say that clerical officer having some kind of a pension, or you have a house, and there's a complete mismatch and market disequilibrium, I would say, given all of that, and it's not really going to last. And it's one of the big reasons, I would say, traditionally, why there is a big divide between the more established parties, political parties in Ireland, versus the anti-disestablishment parties, because in rural areas it's still cheaper possible to buy a house, but in urban areas where you want to go in your city centre of Dublin, 350,000+ euro, it is not, and that is big disparity. Hence why a lot of people feel quite dispowered. So,
but anybody even wanting to come to Sligo now, like thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to get out of Dublin," is going to have to pay a lot of money for something in Sligo, even,
big time. I mean, that said, one of the more popular Instagram channels on the Irish property market right now is literally called Cheap Irish Houses, and a delightful young woman discusses with real enthusiasm a variety of fixer-uppers up and down the country, and a lot of in the northwest, which might be some country shed or cottage of a kind. This here in the middle of nowhere for 35,000 euro.
Yeah,
and there are places like that.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I think that sort of going back to the country and sort of revitalizing the country that way in a natural sort of, people just, I'm sick of the city, coming out to these places. I mean, it could be a real boon to a place like Sligo. And
absolutely, and it is something that is being looked at on a wider level in terms of the strategic review for the regions.
How's your broadband there? Is it?
Well, it was a local election a few years ago, and then it improved. You tell your politicians what you want, and it sometimes gets done.
Amazing.
So I will say that. But the one thing is that this is the make it or break it issue for Darragh Breen, the current housing minister. Can he cut the mustard and actually make housing affordable? And I don't think he really can, because if you look at papers from the 1930s in Ireland, the housing situation was labelled a crisis of immense proportions, and this is the key need of society, housing. And when you look at it in context, the last 200 years, 90% of all wealth, inherited, accrued, or otherwise, has been through property and property management. There is nothing more important to society than property. So that's
well,
why we're looking indeed at a shift, because supply is just now getting quite tight.
Right, and that And you'll speak to landlords as well. I mean, the whole sector kind of needs reform of that. I mean, if we're all going to be renting now, that whole sector needs to be reformed for the landlord as much as the tenant. You know, the whole uh, thing is a mess for both.
Yes, it's incredibly complicated. The Irish system of legislation, and in general, it would favor the tenant more so.
Yeah,
There are legitimately bad tenants out there, and they can damage a property, but it
and the red
it
tape
would
for the
take a
landlord
year
as
to
well.
legally evict someone in Ireland because the property rights are in favor of the tenant, and which you reason, from our historical perspectives,
Absolutely, yeah,
at and all. And there are many scrupulous landlords, and as a previous primetime investigates showed there 6 months ago, sometimes up to 35 people are living in bunk beds crammed into a room,
yeah,
because that's what can happen now when the money is there. So
yeah. Listen, I'll tell you, we just we better move on because we're
certainly.
still just on the Examiner. There's a story on the cover of Tony Shaw Medical Pay Deal, a copy of Baldonnel. Apparently, he requested a hard copy of this the leaked document uh, as he stepped off the government jet after a trip to Brussels. And that request came on April the 10th. After the same day, Ms. Rauter asked um, Mahu O'Toole for his home address, according to to new documents. Sorry, I can barely read that.
No problem. Well,
Okay.
the Garda investigation continues, I believe, and
Yeah,
I think there certainly will be more on this story as the days and weeks pass by.
yeah, he feels fairly confident that there won't be any charges made. This the Irish Sun bizarre cover, Gubu kind of cover. Malcolm MacArthur, do you know? You were obviously too young,
I'm
but
not familiar with him personally.
no. Well, he was killed two people in this sort of weird weekend August bank holiday back in the early '80s, and he was found living in with the attorney in the attorney general's apartment in Dalkey. Uh,
Oh yes, 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 that particular individual.
yeah, yeah. So it was Malcolm
Extraordinary,
McGrath.
extraordinary.
Yeah. Anyway, he's pro mask. He'd be glad to hear. Um, he believes the lockdowns are a necessary precaution in Ireland's fight against COVID. Well, it's utterly bizarre.
Interesting. Well, interesting people like that sell papers. What can I say?
Yeah, yeah,
His name makes people turn their necks. So into the
yeah.
echo there, I see.
Yep. This is about their poor,
Uh,
the tower. Sorry, you wanted to, you
Cork
do,
will have its tallest building ever,
yeah,
and this is a big, big change. And I think hopefully this will be replicated elsewhere in the rest of the country. We need to build higher. We need to build better. And one point I would also like to make in reference to our earlier conversation about housing is that Irish people don't tend to live in apartments. We have the lowest level of apartment living in all of Europe, and uh, apartments to the same scale and height as happens in other parts of the world are just not done. Why that happens versus just on a psychological level, I don't know.
what the
It,
height, the skyscraper thing. Why we're adverse to that?
well, I wouldn't call a building that's maybe 80 meters high, or I
Well,
think
not
it's
in New York, but in Cork it is. You know, it's like bloody huge. It dominates the skyline, breaks up a lot of light for buildings. You know, the light aspect is a real issue. If you look at City, not City Hall, but the old Central Bank, you know, the light that takes away from the surrounding areas, even into Temple Bar. So there are aspects like that. And
yes,
also, we
yes.
don't know how to build skyscrapers. You know, there's
Well,
the thing, we
well,
don't know how to build these things. And literally, I mean, it's a skill and it's an art that they've developed over decades, nearly centuries now in America, and like I don't know. I mean, why do we need the? Why do we need? Do we not have enough space in Ireland Heber, do you believe?
But it's density. I mean, in a city, you have density of services, infrastructure, and everything together, so that the damage on the wider environment is
Yeah.
minimized. Everything is centralized, and classically speaking, as property values are higher in the city center, you would have greater bang for your buck if you build higher. But because of the nature of Ireland's NIMBYist system and big concerns about height, which are legitimate in different regards, but there has to be a balance between, uh, dare I say, the needs of the many and those of the few.
Yeah, but
Again,
you'll have to give me a better argument for the fact that we need, like, these are apartments that are going to be private apartments, aren't they? They're going to be sold as a like a Barbican in London, or like there's no
yeah,
families going to be there. There's no, it's not. There's no social housing aspect to it either. Um. Anyway,
that is definitely like a weakness of any of the first building going forward. It should be
social housing and skyscrapers don't match.
yeah, they don't
No, I
match.
don't.
I would agree, and I think in general, like I think from the Irish, when I think about it, the Irish thought of what an apartment is would be Ballymun of before, and that it would lead to social ills. That a lot of bad things can happen with an apartment, but
Yeah,
change does need to happen. I would argue, and that ultimately we can't keep building out. Land is finite, and like building land, even more so finite, because we have to use what we have effectively. So
this
onwards
is,
to the Sligo Weekender.
which is your local paper, and it's Sligo's only Irish-owned newspaper as well. So
Indeed. So apology issues to bereaved family of Darren. The ambulance service essentially screwed up in that case, as far as I've heard. There was a young man who was diabetic who entered into a state of cardiac arrest or so, and an ambulance was notified with an urgent code, and they could have gotten there for the distance that they were away within about 50 minutes, but for some reason they took about 35. And moreover than that, they even attended to some other matter that wasn't an urgent matter for 2 or 3 minutes before they actually got on the road to drive over, and they totally screwed up. There's no way of saying it otherwise. They absolutely screwed up. And the case went on. This is back in 2010, and only now the family have gotten an apology and a settlement offer for the loss of their son.
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
So a long battle for all concerned. Really, really, really awful. And hopefully,
He could have lived if they had reached him earlier.
potentially, yes.
Right.
I mean, given the fact that the delay was just quite unreasonable. In rural areas, ambulance delays are a big concern. I would also just note, by the way, they're passing through this Sligo Weekender. Eamon and EJ Menswear are Sligo institutions. Well, Eamon there, he owns the famous EJ Menswear, and he's sort of like a Mattress Mick type character for clothes. He really has no shame and has a very successful business because of it. And I quite admire him for what it's worth.
Great. He pulls a lot of kind of stunts like Mick would with
just him once dressing up as a Viking and running around his shop, slashing through with a sword, and like, I'm slicing the prices off this or that.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
No shame.
Great.
And fair play to him. It's hyper competitive, but he knows how to carve his niche.
Blimey, is the menswear market in Sligo ruthless? Is it?
Well, all business is ruthless, is it not?
But would you go to EJ's for a suit if you at Good Court?
Oh, I have. Yeah, I have.
This is the Clare Echo. This is their first week. They sent it to us. Thank you to Porrick who sent this in. Don't really think we can discuss much about their main story though.
Unfortunately not. That's all I've heard
really.
before. Very,
Okay.
very unfortunate.
So welcome to the Clare Echo anyway. The the
The Daily Telegraph
Daily
has a
Telegraph,
picture
yeah.
that says 1,000 words, and it's on the front cover of most of the papers all over the world at the moment.
Yeah.
The Ever Given ship by the company Ever Green
Yeah.
is now holding up 12% of the world's trade. That is 12% of everything that is moving anywhere on
Yeah.
planet Earth right now is held up by the one ship. The one
But
ship.
Irish, I don't want to, but it is, isn't it? Like it's sort of the sheep kind of, blocking the road for, but on a global, as you say, kind of global
Yeah.
scale.
So the interesting thing about that now is, of course, like this hopefully will be fixed soon enough, and the delays won't be that big. But what would it actually mean for the insurance of all the companies concerned? Would the helmsman who created this disaster be personally liable for the millions and millions that have been costed to all the other rival
Are there,
companies?
what's in the cargo, Heber? Is it perishable goods?
I don't know, but
Okay.
these type of ships are colossal, absolutely colossal, and they are so big that the bows of these ship curve downwards so that they fit the curvature of the Earth itself by about a difference of an inch or two. Not that particular ship, because
Oh,
they actually now make ships that are about 2/3 the times bigger than that one there, um, that go over the Pacific and so on and so forth. But the
it's as big as a Cork skyscraper
oh, easily,
in the
easily,
water.
and inside the ship itself, we only see maybe half of the containers that are outside. Uh, they go quite a bit down as well, and the millions and millions of dollars worth of cargo of all kinds inside that beggars belief.
And then
And
the backup as well, and then I guess that's food supply and everything.
everything.
Um,
I mean, we can make fun of this with the memes and everything at the moment,
yeah,
looking at Austin Powers and so on and so forth, with a little truck
yeah.
going back and forth. But
It does seem incredible. I mean, presumably they might have to break it up. Is that
well, the latest they said was that they might fire some kind of a torpedo underneath it to try and
sorry?
push it, because
Yeah,
uh, because they have two guys and one bulldozer trying to move the earth around it from the
yeah,
outside, which,
yeah.
considering Egypt is now the center of the entire world, that's kind of a bad look for Egypt.
Okay. Prince Harry's transformation to California hippie is complete. He's doing it kind of like what you're doing, Heber. This in lockdown, letting the hair.
Well, the latest on Prince Harry is that he has over $100 million, and he has a podcast going with Meghan Markle that has only brought up one last year. And also, he now is in a tech startup in California of a kind, as doing some kind of coaching. Uh, the details I can't recall at the moment, but he is moving on up in the private world, and good luck to him.
Well, okay. Pandemic pups. It's the owners, not the dogs that are the problem. I would always contend. Yeah, mean dog is a mean owner. Is my pubs could ask for jab passports, is on the Telegraph, but then they write down on the Times. They say COVID jab needed to enter pubs.
Yeah,
So
that's a very precarious thing, because we look at what's happening in Israel at the moment, where they have essentially a passport you would have in your
yeah,
phone that says you are vaccinated, therefore you can enter these areas if you want to go to the pubs, restaurants, etc., etc. And
yeah.
you are blocked from entering these places whatsoever if you don't have that. And it certainly is not something unknown for Israel to have such kind of restrictions and policies. But the fact of the matter is, it's kind of coercion without being coercion, is in the options of life are being limited. And the EU at the moment are looking at what they call a green avenue passport or so. There's a session of voting on it tomorrow in the Parliament that wants to go around the standard legislative procedure to bring in potentially an EU passport for vaccines.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a lot of interest in that, all right.
Would you
And
be opposed to that, Heber? Would you fight against that?
I'm pretty concerned by it. I mean, on a civil liberties aspect, like it does make sense in some regards, given that the scale of the disease could continue in the future and the rest. But given that the free movement of EU citizens is a fundamental right, and any denigration of that would be anathema to what the EU itself stands for, I think that any kind of serious conversation about that could have decades of implications has to be done with like the proper, slow, the deliberative process of the Community of the Regions, the Economic and Social Committee, all the other consultative bodies that have to be involved. So we have like proper discussion about it, and so we know what we're getting into. I think ramming forward something just gets people very, very scared, and it gives people reason to say, "Hey, that's not good." So I would be opposed. I would be opposed to it moving forward without some kind of proper deliberation and a real chance to take things a bit more slowly. I mean,
Yeah.
the reality is the virus, while it has been devastating on the lives of many, it hasn't killed as many as we potentially thought it could have from this time last year in the estimations.
Well, ain't that the truth? Cameron investigated a breach of his own lobbying laws.
Yeah, damn hypocrisy strikes again.
Richard Dawkins, I've not often called anyone an idiot.
There's a man you rarely hear of nowadays. He really, 10 years ago, was all the rage
Yeah.
when his God Delusion book came out, and he was Mr. Popular.
Yeah, but there was a bunch of them now. There was
Christopher
Hitchens,
Hitchens as
Stephen
well.
Fry, Sam Harris, the kind of new atheists or whatever. They seem to have.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, how has it just died out essentially as a philosophical and theological period of thought? Why?
Maybe it was an agenda, Heber.
Perhaps. Are you a believer yourself, John?
That it could be an agenda. Yeah, I do. I mean, I sense that was. I mean, it was a late 90s into the noughties, and it was just this, as you say, it was God is not good by Hitchens, the God Delusions, and there were just constant debates, weren't there, like on YouTube?
Yeah, and some
Oxford
really, really fascinating debates where you had the likes of Tony Blair against Richard Dawkins himself on stage, great public debate on the nature of the universe itself, and
right.
and so on and so forth, and where do we find good and the meaning to encourage us to be virtuous or not.
Yeah.
All these great debates that sort of do need to happen in some ways, but yeah.
Well, Dawkins, it's kind of odd. It's the selfish gene and all. It's sort of.
Well, The Selfish Gene he published in 1982, and that was his seminal work that launched him as a geneticist and popularized the theory of mean and coined it as a phrase entirely.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is how Richard Dawkins became famous originally.
Yes. Thanks, Heber.
Yeah, just how Chomsky became famous as a linguist, not as a political scientist.
Thank you. And, okay, Britain and EU in late talks to avoid vaccine blockade.
Trade war continues.
Yeah, not to be confused with our Chomsky, by the way. That's our Chomsky has a P in it.
Oh yes, of course.
Just in case anyone was confused. PM jabs back at EU ban. Same kind of thing. There's an interesting the Vatican under siege. The two popes kind of thing. Are you interested in Vatican matters? That's okay. It's quite a good cover the New Statesman. Boris and Keir Starmer, and
it certainly fits in well with his Oxbridge lifestyle and past. That sort of image of him wearing the boater hat and everything.
Right, but it's dark. There's a sort of
It is dark. It is very, very
bank
dark.
of tombstones there, and is less dark but funnier. Uh, the vaccine, the vaccine meltdown.
Von der Leyen is still held up on everyone. It is a bit of a surprise that she is still going, considering it is within the power of the council to sack the commission if they wanted to. It has happened before. It could happen again. Von der Leyen could go, but Merkel is still there, and
Is that for Adker? Jonesing for a fix there on the bottom left.
I'm not sure if it is, to be honest. I mean, we can see Macron there, and
there's Macron. That's
yeah,
Draghi.
Draghi, yes.
That's.
I'm not sure.
That could be Varadkar. Still, just
maybe, or Pedro Sanchez, perhaps.
Pedro, possibly, yeah.
Yeah, the Spanish Prime Minister. So the Financial Times, what I mentioned earlier, the two guys and the bulldozer fighting.
Yeah,
the evergreen fighting. This is the David and Goliath image that will be referenced by many as emblematic of our times. That our lives are all held up. That we're all waiting to just move forward onto our lives, but it's not yet.
Forgive me there. I just lost. And sorry. I'm multitasking here. Sorry, forgive me.
No problem.
And the Racing Post. Oh yeah, there's some terrible.
Yes, on the Racing Post, the brother of the Sheikh of
yes, yeah, sorry,
Saudi Arabia, he died, and the Saudis have a big influence on the racing industry in UK and Ireland. They buy a lot of horses. They train a lot of horses. They have been involved in many different ways and means, and his death will be looked on very, very sadly by many.
Yeah, he's the uncle of Princess Latifah, who's we haven't heard whether she's alive or dead. He's the brother of her father, I think.
Yes.
Or yeah, but yeah. He was the finance minister of Dubai, is that right? He was the second most powerful.
Yeah. I believe so. But unfortunately, though, given how the media has quite a reticence around looking at Arab matters because of the linguistic divide, we have no way of getting into it in any way of the gossip magazines and interest that Harry and Meghan Merkel did recently. The machinations of the Saudi royals are on a level above anything of the British, to say the absolute least. But
they've stopped kidnapping their daughters anyway.
Yes, and notably, the Phoenix noted last week that Simon Coveney was told essentially by the Saudi ambassador to Ireland, don't make any humanitarian calls. We will stop your trade to Ireland. And as a result, there was nothing really said of any substance by Simon Coveney, Ireland's Foreign Affairs Minister, because Ireland owes also Saudi Arabia for a vote for the UN Security Council.
You call him Coveney, do you?
I suppose, like a tomato, the pronunciation changes, or scone or scone.
Well, kind of Coveney as in rum cove.
From a smuggler's cove.
Yeah. The Star pollution makes Winkle shrinkle. Global climate change is worse than first feared after experts reveal that pollution is causing it also to make men's todgers tiny. So anybody who's on the fence about climate change,
that's an angle I didn't think would be discussed. But
Ryan could perhaps use it.
Perhaps the other thing to mention, of course, in terms of Green politics
Yeah.
of late is Hazel Chu, the Green Party chairperson.
I was just going to
Uh,
ask you about
yeah, she
about
has decided she is currently the mayor of Dublin,
yeah.
and she has decided to run in the Shannon by-election.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Nominations closed recently
Yeah.
for two different seats, and she has gone against her party's wishes to run as an independent, even though she still says she will hold to the government whip, which is a very have your cake and eat it type of position. And she said that she wanted to run because it would mean that there would be a woman contesting the panel. Because
Yeah. Can I play something she's released tonight in terms of a?
oh yes, I've seen it already. But go ahead.
All right. Okay. It's just for the viewers, Heber. You've seen it.
All in prep, John. All in prep.
Oh, good. Well, yeah. Very, very impressed. Can you hear this?
7 state agencies.
Oh.
Hi folks, Hazel Chu here. Want to record a quick video to let you know that I am running for the upcoming Shannon by-election in the commercial and industrial panel. So I would have come from a very business background, from working with my mum at a very young age, from the chip plant all the way to the restaurant. I would have helped to support and manage the family business before moving on to nonprofits and then semi-state agencies, and then moving on to multinationals, working as head of function for 6 years. So for me, the most important thing is to help Irish businesses and the business sector come up from their knees, because from COVID, it's left everyone and left every worker and employer on their knees during this pandemic, and we need to do better by them. So I want to make sure that our Irish industry and commerce thrives in a world that is increasingly digitalized. And I believe that my experience across functions and sectors equips me with a uniquely broad perspective in this critical time. Also, I believe that representation matters, and it is essential in politics that we represent the world and society we live in. As others look to divide with rhetoric, I want to champion and celebrate diversity. I want the next generation to be able to say that they can be whatever they want. After all, you can't be what you can't see. So we need to make sure that there is better representation across the board in every election. And that's why I'm delighted to be on the ballot of this coming election. And I would like to thank all my nominations. And for those who would like to support me, contact your TDs and senators and tell them to give me a vote. And I look forward to representing yourselves in future in whatever role. Thank you.
Okay.
So any thoughts, John?
Well, no. Oh, sorry.
Oh. Well, two things from that video that really strike out. One, she never mentioned green issues, green politics, her background at all whatsoever. Secondly, she noted how it was to her personal profile and whatever other election in the future. That there was a video for her Dáil election, which she knows if there was a Dáil election as an independent or even as a Green Party candidate, she would win. She would win because she has a very, very strong personal vote, because her personal story and her online profile is substantial and significant. So her move there, while she said is for representation of women, in my opinion, is disingenuous. I think ultimately she's looking to raise her flag and profile so that she can challenge Eamon Ryan's leadership. And the thing is, Eamon Ryan prevented her from running for the Dáil recently enough, when she, on her local vote alone, got nearly 2.5 quotas, an absolutely staggering amount of votes that would have won her on her own in that very small area, a Dáil seat as it was. Eamon Ryan fears her, and Eamon Ryan is
why does he fear
concerned her? Because that's his seat directly. His personal seat is threatened, and he used all of his
I see what you mean. Yeah, but
internal
now,
power
now
to
why
stop
is he?
her.
Yeah, sorry.
So now she is moving against him. And recently, there was a leak that a new left-wing party is forming at the moment, and that they may announce who or what they are within a week from now. And some of their analysis and documents were leaked to the media recently. It is thought that they would become some type of an offshoot from the Green Party and a mixture of other political groups here and there. The Greens have, of course, split before to make Fish Nua, which bombed, but and other independents like tip my tongue. FU Deputy Stagg.
Gogarty.
Paul Gogarty. Yes, thank you. Paul. The Green Party is very much on a cusp of wondering what it's all about, because a lot of its wins are basically stolen by Fine Gael, and Fine Gael run forward by saying we're the enablers of these good and great ideas, and the Greens have hemorrhaged membership from the last while by their by the current government formation.
Could I just ask you on the Hazel Chu thing? Hazel's the mayorship is up when? May,
yeah, May, pretty soon. And
so for her to stand, she wouldn't have to. She doesn't have to quit as mayor, but if she does win, she'll have to resign as mayor before her term is over.
Yes.
Would this have been the best, opportunity for her to go for a Senate seat?
I think perhaps on a personal level, I think she's having a gambit, and she knows that Eamon Ryan won't last as leader anyways. He's been around for 12, 13 years at this stage.
Yeah.
Catherine Martin
it does look very disloyal, and also in that kind of Mary Robinson leaving a position. Dublin people certainly take that kind of the Lord Mayor role as it's quite symbolic, and we're very fond of it and all that. It's not the mayor of New York, but I mean, it's a so she if she leaves that early, then won't that affect her with voters in the future? Really, if she's going to go for electoral kind of politics on that level,
potentially, but
but as you say, she's got a big following.
Her vote is real. It's very, very big, and even with everything recently, she could still romp home, I think. And she does put herself in a bit of a weak position by saying she would still take the party whip, i.e. voting with the government, when she wants to join, potentially, as is rumoured, a new party that would be a new opposition group. It doesn't really stack up there. But the fact of the matter is, she's known and admired by many, and the way forward for Eamon Ryan really is how to minimize this situation to ensure that he will survive himself politically and hold on to his leadership, which he has. And I would say that he has brought the party back from the brink, like Micheál Martin in his own way, but he worked for free for a couple of years and kept going where others would have given up, and also had the pragmatism and political sense to know where and how to make the compromises to actually move forward and deliver a lot of more votes for his party. He has been incredibly successful. However, the change is brewing, and the change will come, just as we may see in other political parties. So,
well, I think Roderick O'Gorman and this and the sleeping thing, it's not great. I mean, what's happening? The Greens there's an air of weirdness, isn't there?
There is. I mean,
there's a third thing that I can't remember, but.
CETA,
of course.
Yes.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
But I wouldn't really think that generally would get
No.
The thing mentioned on a lot of doors on a canvas, if canvassing were to happen nowadays, of course.
Yeah.
The thing is that these are essentially niche issues that matter to what essentially is a middle class protest vote. Where Labour goes down, the Greens go up.
Yeah.
And now the Social Democrats and others. That is how the levers of power in Irish politics work. When people have a sense of how to be, they're comfortable in life, they will choose to vote for the Greens. And the issues of Green politics are not really seen as necessary. We haven't had a massive hurricane or a significant area of our coastline being lost in a dramatic fashion that grabs the attention yet. But the issues are there. Biodiversity loss in Ireland is absolutely colossal, mainly due to our agricultural practices. And species are dying, and these challenges are not being met with sufficient vigor to actually stop what's going on. But politically, how things go forward.
So this is a radical new party with kind of green credentials, but more left wing, obviously, than the Greens at the moment.
Yeah. Again, it's all speculation. A week from now, this could be something. This could be some ploy. Given I don't know. I fully, but I've been shared some information from of the screenshots of these things that have been circulating around.
Very interesting. Well, thank you.
But the issue is that if Hazel Chu is going out like this, it's clear that there is some kind of a power move being made, and there's a sense of opportunity in the air, and the deals for the Shannon votes could go this way or that way. A new senator, if elected, would be a big deal, because that would say a certain agreement is broken, that political power is shifting, just as it was years ago with Gerald Crockwell when he won the Shannon by-election after the scandal of Patrick Nulty. It was a big blow at the time to Enda Kenny's leadership, for him to be elected, and for a whole relook at how a Shannon by-election actually works at the time. So
I thought this was about the hate bill. I thought it was effectively to get Hazel Chu in there I mean, she's a vocal.
Yes. I mean, she is known online most for facing up to her racist abusers. And there are many racist abusers who absolutely hate the fact that she is willing to stand up for herself and not make any apologies for standing up for herself. And she has significant courage and bravery to continue to do so, where others would have bowed down and given up. So
she has a ton of support, though, as well. I mean, I've known, obviously, you know, there is going to be that, but she is Lord Mayor of Dublin. You know, I mean, it's an incredible achievement, isn't it? You know, I think it's a very privileged position. I think that's what I've always felt about. Well, certainly since she was elected or elevated to Lord Mayor, I thought that was a good position to be a disruptor. You know,
absolutely. And the point she also made in her video that is true. Essentially, if you can see it done, you can get it done. That if you see someone of a different background in a position of authority, prestige, and all the rest, you can believe that it can be you in the future, that it can be the future. And that says a lot rather positively for the changing nature of Irish society and the empowerment that all sections of Irish society have, that they can actually go forward. And Hazel Chu's story is great and good. I mean, she is clearly a very hard worker, and one who has no thin skin.
Yeah, well, she's going to need it now, I think. I mean, she's obviously got some non-racist enemies in the Green Party, certainly now. I think there's, you know, they feel probably hard done by now. Heber, thank you very much. Great chat tonight.
Thank you very much, John. Pleasure as always.
Any movement? You're staying down there for the week? Are you?
Oh well, for the next while, anyways. We shall see.
No essential trips out of beyond your 5K.
Not for the moment. Not for the moment. But we one day at a time. One day at a time.
Okay. Well, great to chat with you, Heber, and we'll hopefully see you next week.
Great. Thank you very much.
Standing invite there, and thank you very much for joining us.